the Marys. I'm going to talk about the Marys this morning. It's been a while since I've stood here. Gosh. There were 3 Marys that I'm going to talk about today that were very important in Jesus' life that we will read in the Gospels, the Synoptic Gospels. The first one, of course, is Mother Mary. I was raised Catholic, so I'm very familiar with her. The Catholics have a holy day for her, and she is very revered. She is known by many names: Queen Mother, Saint Mary, Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of God, and Child God-bearer, just to name a few. She is mentioned in many religious traditions: Methodist, Lutheran, Protestant. She's in the Quran. And of course, as I said earlier, in Catholicism, she has her holy day, and you will see statues in Catholic churches with votive candles in front of them where you can go and pray, light a candle and pray. Her Hebrew name is Miriam, and she was a woman that was around in the 1st century BCE and the 1st century CE, before the Common Era and then the Common Era. Now, growing up, we would say before Christ or after Christ. So now it's BCE and CE. As in normal Jewish tradition, it was the mother who taught the children the rituals and customs of the faith. And we could assume that Mary did the same for Joseph and her other children. When we read in the Bible, she is in both of the birth narratives, which that would make sense. They're not the same, as you all know. And she was a woman of faith. In one of the birth narratives, when the angel came and told her that she would be giving birth to a son, the Son of the Most High, she didn't blink. We didn't read that she was concerned at all. She said, "I am here as a servant of the Lord. Let it be according to your word." Now, I have to tell you, when I was doing some research on her, I found a cartoon. And it was a picture of a very pregnant Mary on a donkey, and Joseph is pulling the donkey. And while they're heading to Bethlehem, she's in there reading a book, and the cover of the book was "How to be a Mother of a God." Now, I'm not taking that too seriously, but I truly believe in the things that I read about her, that she was possibly in a temple somewhere. She studied for years, beginning as a child as early as 3 years old. So she was very prepared spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically to be the mother of Jesus, to teach Jesus in his early years about the Jewish faith. And a lot of people forget that Mother Mary and Jesus were both Jewish. There's a story also in the Bible that Mary, Joseph, and Jesus go to Jerusalem for Passover, an annual pilgrimage. So we can see that she practiced her faith religiously because they had to travel for Passover. And of course, the story tells us that when she came back, after a day of traveling, they realized that Jesus wasn't with them. And as a parent, I certainly can understand there were some frantic moments wondering where their son was. So they go back to Jerusalem, and after 3 days, according to the story, they find Jesus in a temple, listening to the other teachers. And they, as a parent, I can certainly them saying, "Where have you been? We've been looking all over the place for you." "I've been here." In my Father's house. Don't you know that I have to be in my Father's house, is what Jesus' reply was. We read of Mary again at the wedding of Cana, where Jesus performs his first miracle, turning water into wine. That'd be a nice thing at a party, wouldn't it? But they had run out of wine, according to the story. And Mary goes to Jesus and says, they run out of wine. And Jesus answers, why are you telling me? My time has not yet come. And she immediately turns to the servants and says, do as my son tells you. And then Jesus turns the water into wine. And it was better than the wine that they started serving on the first day of the wedding feast. So she intuitively knew what her son was capable of, not only through her training as a young man, as a child, as a young man, but in her faith and pure intuition is the definition of Mary in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary by Charles Fillmore. Pure intuition. She knew when it was time for Jesus to step forward to take that leadership role. She knew. She also knew, and we can take that within ourselves, the intuition. So we know intuitively when it is time for us to take that step forward, to take a leadership role and to do what is ours to do what we came here to do on our spiritual path. So we can take what Mary has taught us and through her life, which isn't a whole lot in the Bible, but that special story at the wedding, that intuition that she expressed, had Jesus take the next step. She knew when it was the right time. She was a woman of faith. She was a disciple of Jesus. She followed him. She was part of the traveling. She was a woman of strength and courage. And she would have had to have been, because she is stated in the Bible that she was at Jesus' crucifixion. So she would have had to have been very strong and very courageous and full of unconditional love for her son and understanding what was his to do. Now, the second Mary is Mary of Bethany. Mary of Bethany is the sibling of Martha and Lazarus. And we first read about Mary of Bethany when Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. That is our first time we hear of her. And even though we don't hear a whole lot about her, what she has done in this next Bible story is something that we need to also incorporate in our spiritual path. It's the story when Jesus is visiting the town where they live, and he is friends. You get the feeling that they're friendly and they know each other in past communications with Lazarus and Mary and Martha. So he stops at their house, and he's invited in for dinner. And he's sitting in their parlor-type area, and Mary is at his feet, listening to what Jesus has to say. And Martha's in the kitchen cooking. And Martha gets a little upset because Mary's not in the kitchen helping her. And I have a sister. I understand that. If I was in the kitchen doing all the work and my sister's just sitting out in the parlor area listening to what this guy says, I'd be a little ticked off too. I get it. So Martha expresses herself and she says, Jesus, I'm in here doing the work. Why is my sister just sitting there at your feet listening to you? Don't you think she should be in here with me? And he says, no. Mary is doing what is right. Mary is here listening to what I have to say. She has chosen what is better, and this will not be taken away from her. So again, we look at the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, and we see that Charles Fillmore wrote, Martha is doing service, but she's doing outer service. She's doing something material. And Mary is doing the inner work. And as we know, as stated in the Bible, it cannot be taken away from her. When you're doing outer service, you're doing something different. You're cooking, you're cleaning. You're going out and serving in other areas. It's different. And once that is over, it's over. But the inner work never, ever leaves you. It stays with you forever. And that's what Mary is doing. Now, granted, you need to do both. You need to have your outer work and you do your inner work. One is service to others. The other is service to you, to yourself on your spiritual path. But I will say that when you start your inner work and continue your inner work, prayer, meditation, it is a natural path for you to do outer work because you are in a mode of serving others as God has served you. You're ready to share. You're ready to give so you can receive more. Both of these activities are necessary. You need to strengthen your outer consciousness and your inner consciousness. So we can take Mary's lesson and that story with us and use that in our daily lives also. And our last Mary is Mary Magdalene. Now, how many of you, the first thing that came to your mind was she's a harlot, a sinner, a courtesan? Even though that's changed now. The Catholic Church said so in 1969. But I guarantee you, many of you, that's the first thing that popped into your mind until you said, oh, that's changed. I would imagine at least half. And that came about in the year 594, when Pope Gregory the Great spoke a homily, which is a service, a message, and said that's who she was. That's her reputation. And that wasn't changed until 1969 during the papacy of Pope Paul VI. No one knows. Well, a lot of people have comments about how it came about in the year 594. Patriarchal society, and also women in leadership. They did not want women in leadership. So there's a lot of stories going around. But the fact is that that's when it started in 594 with Pope Gregory, and in 1969 the Catholic Church decided, well, that really wasn't true. Now, in my modest opinion, I think Mary Magdalene is the second most important woman in the New Testament. The first is Mother Mary. And the reason why I say this, if you read all four synoptic gospels, at the end, when Jesus is crucified, at his burial, and his resurrection, Mary Magdalene is named in every single one of the gospels. She is named, and she is the first woman that is named. So it just tells me there was some importance with this lady. She meant an awful lot to the movement at that time. And it just, when I did more research and saw that in 594 her reputation was kind of trashed, why did this happen when you can see in the Synoptic Gospels that she was given a woman of great importance to be written, that she was at all three very important events in Christianity. Huge events in Christianity. She is known as the Apostle of the Apostles. She's the only one that's known as that. That's her title. And the reason is that she was the first person at the resurrection that was told to spread the word that Jesus had risen. She's the only person that has that title. Now, I know that you may have read some things about a romantic relationship with Jesus at some point in time. It kind of blew up in 2003 when the Da Vinci Code came out, written by Dan Brown. Hey, anything's possible. For me, it doesn't matter because it doesn't take away the message of Jesus or the message of the story of Jesus and what we were taught. But I will share something with you, and this is in the Gospel of Philip, which is not a synoptic gospel. It was a Gnostic, K-N-O-S-T-I-C gospel, which means knowledge. And this gospel was in the find of the Nag Hammadi in 1945. And it states, there are three who always walked with the Lord: Mary, his mother, and his sister, and Magdalene, the one who was called his companion. His sister, his mother, and his companion were each a Mary. That is in the Gospel of Philip. So you guys can make a decision on what you wish to choose what their relationship was, her and Jesus' relationship. But I thought I'd share that with you. Now, the one story, besides the magnificence of her being in a very crucial time, at very crucial events in the Bible, the one story that many of us probably think of is when Jesus cleansed her of the 7 deadly sins. And that, too, is something that we can take into our lives. Last night in the movie, it was portrayed rather interestingly. Jesus looks at her and puts his hand out and says, "Cleanse her." And she's standing there with all of her makeup and her jewelry and everything, as a courtesan would wear at that time, I suppose. And then you see these ghosts coming out of her. Lust and greed and wrath and anger. And all these ghosts just coming out all around her, and they're clinging to her. It was a pretty cool scene. And then all of a sudden, with Jesus still staring at her, they disappear. They disappear. And the makeup is not as heavy. A lot of the jewelry's gone. Her hair is down, like the custom. And she looks very serene and peaceful. Of course, that was Cecil B. DeMille's take on how it happened. But even if it happened, if Jesus did help her cleanse these sins from her, or these feelings that she lived with, she went through a transformation. A transformation by being and living the teachings that Jesus taught. Now think about yourselves. Think about yourselves when you started realizing that there was something else out there. You started reading different books, taking different classes, going to different churches, seeking, because we are all seekers. Think about how you were at that time. Did you get angry just like that? Did you hoard things you wouldn't give, you wouldn't share? What type of person were you before you consciously started that path, that spiritual path? And then think a little farther. After you meditated and you prayed and you took the classes and you listened to different people, sermons, seminars, denials, affirmations. And think of something that happened in your life where normally you would have just blown up, got very angry. But yet, after doing some inner work, as Mary of Bethany tells us, You were able to handle that situation way better. You were calmer. You were at peace. You shared what you received. So we all of us have gone through a transformation. And in order to do the work, that inner work, we all transform just like Mary Magdalene did. Exactly. Maybe not with ghosts around us, but we all go through a transformation. And we go through a transformation each time we pray, each time we meditate, each time we take a Bible story and take it within a quiet time. We transform. And that is something that Mary Magdalene has taught us that we do in our daily lives to help us on our spiritual path. These three women have taught us things that help us keep us going forward. Now, I don't know, in my studies, in my research, I do not know what happened to Mary of Bethany. There's nothing that I could find. And Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene, the stories that I read, they both ended up, traveled to France separately, and that's where they died. But it really doesn't matter in a long run. It doesn't matter. So because we can take what they have taught us. Mother Mary, the Blessed Virgin Mary, she taught us to use our intuition, to trust, to have faith when we get these promptings, to take a leadership role, to step out, to do what is ours to do. Mary of Bethany taught us that we need to do the inner work. We need to do prayer, meditation, studying, so that we can be confident and to trust our intuition to step out and to continue our path. And Mary Magdalene taught us that we are going through a transition, and we will continue to go through a transition as long as we continue the inner work to make our lives closer to what God wants our lives to be. God wants us to have the kingdom, but we need to do the work. It is our choice. And when we do the work, we are transformed. And not only when our inner is transformed, our outer world reflects that inner. So I encourage you to take these stories, pick them up in the Bible, read them, contemplate, pray, meditate on these stories, and see what you can get out of it. I'm sharing what I learned. I'm sharing what Charles Fillmore shared with us. Incorporate what they teach us into your lives. As we seek the light, and all of us seek the light will be shown to us. There was a scene last night in the movie where this young girl, 7, 8, she was blind, and she's trying to find Jesus so he can help her. So Mary, Mother Mary, picks her up and takes her and shows her to Jesus, and Jesus comes to her. And the girl is saying, please help me to see. I haven't seen the flowers. I haven't seen the world around me. I want to see. And all of a sudden, the screen is dark, and then all of a sudden you see the shining light starting to get brighter and brighter, coming down on her and shining on her. And she says, I can see the light. I can see the light. And the light just starts getting brighter and brighter around her, and she is so excited. And in the end, she could see. She's not blind anymore, and she is so excited. And that's what we are on our path. When we see the light, we are so excited. And in order to see the light brighter and brighter, to express God more fully, we trust our intuition, we do the inner work, and we transform. And when we transform, that is when we see the light brighter. And that is when we express more fully who we are. And that is God's heirs. Peace be with you.